Good? Good to go?
Yeah.
All right, how you doing, everyone? I'm Joe Burns from City of Newburgh. I'm going to talk to you today about the Law Enforcement Bicycle Patrol. In lieu of signing my name on the board, I'm going to hand out business cards. Pass those down. Guys, my email's on here. That's generally how I communicate with people. So if you have a question, professionally and privately, just shoot me an email, and if I can answer it, I will. I'll go into my background a bit. City of Newburgh police officer since 2005. I've been with the City of Newburgh the entirety of my career. Spent time in the narcotics unit. I did about 4 years in the narcotics unit, so when you guys were talking about CIs and stuff, that I can talk about that stuff all day long. I'm the head of the bicycle unit, assistant team leader of the SWAT team. Been on the SWAT team for a number of years now. I'm an FBI certified firearms instructor. I went to the school in West Point in 2013. We've been talking about it in class. It's a great school. If you guys get an opportunity to go to it, definitely do that. Currently a detective lieutenant. I got promoted to lieutenant in May of 2017. Before that I was a detective sergeant. Before that I was in charge of the narcotics unit, and then I was a regular sergeant on the street. DCGS Bike School in early 2015. This is a photo of me at the bike school. I'm the handsome gentleman to the far right that's not balding at all. A little history of my biking. I've been pretty big into mountain biking for the past 7 or 8 years. Spent a lot of time out at Stewart at the New Windsor Firearms Range. There's a bunch of trails that you can just spend hours and hours and hours biking there. One of the requirements for this school is a long ride. We chose to ride from the police academy here to New Paltz and back. It was like 42, 43 miles. And that sparked a love of cycling in me. After the school was done, I went out, bought myself a road bike, and usually July, June, and August, I'm out there doing about 100 miles a week on my bike. So our learning objectives today. We're going to be able to identify the history of the bicycle and current police bicycles. We're going to be able to identify the advantages of the police bicycle. So what are the purpose, what benefits do the police bicycles bring to departments. We're going to be able to identify bicycle nomenclature. Just going to be an overview of some of the main components of the bicycle. And we're going to be able to identify some bike accessories. So how can you spend money on these bikes? We're also going to be able to identify some bicycle safety concerns and some riding hazards. So the history of the bicycle, we spoke about this yesterday. As our society became industrialized, we moved from the farms to the cities, and we needed an easier way to get back and forth. Our first verifiable claim belongs to the Baron Karl von Drais in Baden, Germany, 1817. That's a picture of the design that he made. Basically, you straddled that bike, you picked up some speed, and then you were able to balance. Those of us that have kids in the room, imagine you took the training wheels off, you took the pedals off, you had your kids stand in between the bike, kind of run, and their focus was balancing. Again, it was used as a running machine. It was first used on June 12th, 1817. The Baron rode 8 miles from Mannheim, Germany in a little under an hour. So 1817, that amount of distance in that short a time, that's pretty impressive. Just history of the bicycle continue. The Baron's design is further refined, gives way to the hobby horse. This is a photograph of the hobby horse. Again, it's just the seat is a little bit more comfortable, but it's still that same premise. You're going to straddle this machine, you're going to build up some speed, and then you're just going to let gravity do its job. This is from about the 1820s onward. History of the bicycle continued. 1860s gives way to bone shakers. This is a photograph of the bone shakers. We'll note there's no suspension and there's no rubberized tires. So imagine the roads of the 1860s. We're dealing with dirt, cobblestone in many cases. It's very uncomfortable to ride this bike. You're feeling every single jolt, every crack, every bump is going through your entire body. This is the first pedal drive system. So you see the front tire here, that's our first pedal. So right around the 1870s, we get the penny farthing. This is that huge front wheel bicycle. That's 2 photographs of it there. This is just a continuation of the pedal drive system. and it enables for higher speeds than the Bone Shakers. These bikes are still around today. You can go on YouTube. They actually have bike races with these in the UK. So if you want to spend a couple, 2-3 hours in a YouTube hole, this is a good way to do it. Again, enabled for higher speeds. So the 1880s comes around and we have two major developments. The first is the safety bicycle. The safety bicycle becomes invented. The safety bicycle features a rear train drive, which is common on many bikes today. So the pedal moves from the front of the bike to the middle of the bike, and the chain is used to activate the rear tire. Our next invention is rubber. We have John Dunlop, who invents the pneumatic bicycle tire. It makes riding on the surfaces of the day a lot easier. We had the Bone Shakers. It was very difficult. It was hard. It was difficult for young kids and women to ride these bicycles. This makes bicycle riding ubiquitous for everyone. Everyone's able to now ride a bicycle. So the introduction of the police bike right around the 1890s. That's when we start seeing the police bicycle. First bicycle policeman is Arnold Kurth. There's a photograph of him. He was an immigrant from Cologne, Germany. He became Stamford, Connecticut's first bicycle police officer in 1892. So bicycle police adoption. Right around the 1895 mark, we start seeing widespread adoption from other cities. We have cities like New York City, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, Chicago, and even parts of Canada all adopt some form of bicycle patrol as a function of their patrol. So New York City, Teddy Roosevelt, acting in his capacity as the NYPD police commissioner, institutes the first bicycle patrol unit. That's a picture of them there. They were about a 30-man unit. They were responsible for over 1,300 arrests in the first years of their existence. They were noted for their increased police efficiency. So it was just a lot easier in 1895 to get around Lower Manhattan or anywhere in Manhattan on a bicycle as opposed to the norm of the day, which was foot patrols. They were also noted for their ability to control runaway horses. Not something we think about in 2018, but 1895, a runaway horse could do some damage. It could trample some kids or some women, so that was a real concern. So there's an increase early in the 20th century. Estimates put about 50,000 bicycle police officers nationwide by 1817. In Indianapolis, 25% of the arrests made in 1908 were done by their bicycle squad. Their bicycle squad consisted of 12 members. Greater New York employed about 1,200 bicycle patrolmen. They were noted for their ability to cover 8 to 9 times the territory than your typical walking patrolman. Now there's a decline of bicycle policing. This decline starts right around World War I. It's brought about by the advent of the motor vehicle and then the motorcycle. Eventually the motorcycle replaces the bicycle unit in many departments. By the end of World War II, bicycle units are few and far between. The focus is now on technology, so police departments are judged for their response time. And that's the benchmarks that's used on the moment a citizen calls to when that first officer arrives on scene. Decline continues right up until the era of the Civil Rights Movement, 1960s. There were studies done that showed a decrease in police and community involvement. This was linked to the decline in foot patrols and the increased reliance on motorized patrol. So there's a resurgence. The resurgence comes about as police departments realize that they need to get back in touch with their communities. This happens in the 1970s, and it becomes widespread in the 1980s. California is among the first to operate or to experiment with increased bicycle police. Obviously, weather plays the big role in that. We look outside, we got 5-6 inches of snow. I looked this morning, LA is projected to be 77 degrees today. So there's a big difference. You're just able to use the bike more days out of the year than you would in the Northeast. This increases to other cities in the 80s and the 90s. Seattle becomes the first police department to offer a full-time bike unit, year-round. 80% of units are started between 1988 and 1990. So current police bicycle. NYPD estimates they have about 3,000 certified bicycle patrol officers. LAPD estimates they have 350 full-time. Houston estimates 210 full-time. As of 2000, there was approximately 35,000 bicycle patrol officers throughout the country, and it's expected to continue to grow into the future. Current police bicycle. This is a photograph of the LAPD. It's two LAPD bicycle cops. Our next slide is Washington. You'll see it's just a train of bicycles as far as the eye can see. That's the marches. We spoke yesterday. This is the 2018 police bike. It's valued at $1,400. Just as a comparison, this is their performance road bike. It's the 2018 Trek Madone. It's valued at $14,000. So there's that big disparity. So some bicycle patrol advantages. So bicycle patrol can be an asset. The big thing is it builds community relationships, right? So it's 2018, there's been a bunch of police shootings, police are in a really bad light. It's very important for agencies to get in touch with their communities. There's a higher chance of increased neighborhood interactions. The argument in the 1960s, as we said, was police departments relied on motorized patrol, and as a result, they had lost touch with their community. So if you can imagine a patrolman just kind of driving down the street, there's not really that ability to interact with the members of their community. Now, it gives officers the appearance of greater approachability. When you're a police officer in a police car, there's a tendency for you to be a little intimidating to the members of your community. Police officer on a bike, I mean, I parked my bike, on a corner, just got off, and people want to come and they want to talk to you. The little kids want to see the bike, so there's just that increased approachability factor. Again, it's less threatening than the patrol car. They say you make twice as many contacts as you would on a bike if you were in a car. Next advantage is cost. They're cost effective. Supervisors in the room, right? We don't want to necessarily police by a budget, but sometimes we're forced to. Bike versus car costs. Who's got the Tahoe out here? Somebody was, Sarge, I think you were driving the Tahoe yesterday. What's that, $40,000? So you could get a whole bunch of bikes, for one Tahoe. There's environmental benefits. Not something we necessarily think about in law enforcement, but you're zero emissions. You're not polluting the planet. There's no pollution whatsoever. And there's health benefits. You got healthier cops. Being on a bike is physically demanding, so you're using your own muscle power, and you're just increasing your ability to withstand injury. Some other advantages: increased mobility. So you're able to cover terrain that you wouldn't necessarily be able to cover in a in a vehicle. So things like parks, for example. You're not going to drive through a park on a police car, but you can get through a park on your bicycle without any difficulty at all. Stealth advantage for you narco guys in the room. How great would it be to be doing a narco buy or doing a sting or whatever, and you got a bike patrol officer right around the corner? You're going to be able to have that bike patrol officer move in, and as the bike patrol officer riding up to a suspect that doesn't expect you to be there, turning around and seeing, oh, it's the police right here, and getting arrested. That's a satisfying feeling. Again, they're silent. No one knows you're coming on a bike, and you go unnoticed. They're not looking for you. No one expects the bike or a police officer to be on a bike riding down the street. Rapid response in an urban area. So think about New York City, for example. Rush hour traffic, if you have a call to go to, it might be tough as someone in a police car to get where you need to get. Bicycle patrol, you can weave in and out of traffic without really too much difficulty and get where you need to be. Crowded areas. We think about our concerts, for example. If you're in a concert, for anyone that's in Sullivan County, they have all those concerts up there. to get from one side of the concert to the other side on foot might be difficult. On a bike, it's going to be a lot easier. They're effective for crowd control. Not something we think about, right? Who went to the civil disobedience training for the sheriff's department? I'm sure you guys had to sit through that, right? The move back, move back.
Yeah.
So you could pick up a bike, form a picket line, and do your move back. So this is a photo of a picket line as an example. You're not getting through that as a bad guy unless you really want to get arrested. So they're very effective for crowd control. They're used a lot. We saw the slide earlier down in DC. Those guys were there in case something broke out where they needed to form a picket line. So nomenclature, we're going to talk about some nomenclature. Different parts of the bike. This is my personal road bike, it's a Trek. This is also my personal mountain bike, also a Trek, so I'm a Trek guy. For you car guys out there, if you're a Chevy guy or a Ford guy or whatever, I'm a Trek guy. There's a bunch of other bike brands, but this is the one that I prefer. So materials, talking about materials. Steel and aluminum, those are going to be your most common materials that are used to construct a bike. Some bikes are made out of full carbon fiber, so there's some benefits to full carbon fiber. One of the big ones is the weight is decreased. So we talked about the picket line. You're standing out there on a picket line, how long are you really holding your bike in your hands before fatigue sets in with something steel and aluminum? You know, if it's 20 pounds with steel, maybe it's 15 pounds with carbon fiber, you're going to be able to hold that bike up there for a longer period of time. Some downsides, it's very expensive, very, very expensive. Carbon fiber is going to add $500, $600, $700 to any of the materials that you're going to purchase. And they are prone to damage. So if you're going to be the kind of bike cop that wants to bike in somewhere, throw your bike on the ground to tackle somebody, don't go with carbon fiber because the cost factor is going to come back into play. And again, bikes can range from hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars, depending on what type of materials are going to be used in the construction. So the frame, we talk about the frame. This is the main portion of the bike. It's in that diamond shape. This is where all the other things start to get attached. You have your top tube, your bottom brackets. This is going to be the main body of the bike. So the fork, you have your fork. This is what's used to keep the, it's inserted into the top tube. It's what's used to keep the bicycle tire in place. So there's a front fork and a rear fork, and they attach to the frame. Our groups and our components. So the headset. This is a photograph of the headset here. This is, it attaches to the upper and lower ends of the head tube. It really depends on what type of bike you have. If you have a mountain bike, it might be different. It really depends on what it's attached to. And it depends on the geometry of the rider, on what you're looking to accomplish. So the hubs. This is a photograph of the hubs where the arrow is. It's attached to my trainer, but that's where the hubs are. They're used to hold the wheel in place, and it allows it to spin. So we have here, this is a quick release skewer. This goes in the hub, and I can release this real quick if I got to take the bike out, the bicycle tire out. So it's a quick release skewer. So you can't see it in the photograph because of the trainer, so I wanted to show you there. So the crankset. Crankset is this circular device here. There's a front, well, it provides leverage to turn the bicycle chain. Groups and components continued. Sorry about that. Alright, so our gears. This is our gears right here. This is what's used to either increase your difficulty or decrease your difficulty, depending on what you want to do. If you're on a flat surface, if you're on a hill, etc. Brakes. There's two main types of brakes. We have our caliper brakes, which require you to squeeze down on the brake to come to a stop. And we also have our disc brakes. Our disc brakes are often hydraulic. They're much easier to stop. So with caliper brakes, I need to use my power to slow the bike down. With a disc brake, I can use one finger and come to a much quicker stop. Again, it stops in a shorter distance. So there's some advantages to that when you're on patrol. If you're riding along, you see something behind you, you got to stop real quick and turn around. You're going to want to use your disc brake. So this is a photograph of caliper brakes right here. You'll notice there's pads. Those pads are what's used to slow down the bike. And our disc brakes are right here. There's one in the front and there's one in the rear behind the gears. You can't really make it out. You'll notice that this is the 2018 Trek police bike. They've gone to disc brakes. They've recognized the advantages to disc brakes over caliper brakes, so that's what they're offering standard on the police bike. Shift and brake levers. So that is your brake and your shift lever. This is a road bike, so it's a little bit different. On the road bike, you're going to pull back to stop, and then there's difficult to see, but there's an indentation there on where the shifter is. So you're able to shift the gears either to a lower gear or a higher gear, again, depending on what you want to utilize the bike for. Our next slide should be our derailleur. So these are designed to move the front and rear derailleurs. So your front and rear derailleurs it might not be pictured. So your front and rear derailleurs are what's used to move the big ring or into the small ring. So you have two rings that are by the pedals. The big ring, that's tough to say, is utilized to increase your speed. So that's where you're going to get the most speed from, is your big ring. Your small ring is going to be used when you're trying to climb a hill, for example. Your right side shifter moves the gears in the back, so from the lowest gear, which is the hardest gear, up to the highest gear, which is the easiest gear. And your left shifter, which there's no arrow, but you can see there, is used to move from the big ring to the small ring. They currently have electronic group sets, so that's very beneficial to a rider. When you're riding along, you don't want to constantly be having to look in between your legs to see what gear you're in. It's happened to me where you'll be riding along, there's a hill approaching, and you're pedaling up the hill, and all of a sudden the hill just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing, and you go to move into a lower gear and you're at the lowest gear. That's demoralizing mentally when you're trying to get the bike to be a little bit easier and it's already in its easiest gear. So having something like that where you can just look at your little bike computer to tell kind of where you're at is a huge benefit. Again, these can be linked to your bike computers. We'll get into that in a little bit. Handlebars. So they're attached to the stem. This is a mountain bike handlebar. It's a little different than a road bike. They come in various widths and lengths depending on what you want to do. The longer they are, the more stability you have. The shorter they are, it's a little bit more maneuverable. They can be customized depending on what you're looking to do and what you're looking to accomplish. They're one of 3 points of contact. So we have 3 points of contact. This is the first point of contact. And obviously they're used to steer the bike. Our pedals. They're used by the feet to power the bike, right? Pedal power. They're attached to the crank arms, and they're our second point of contact. Our saddle. It's a photograph of the saddle right there where the arrow is. It supports the weight of the cyclist. It's our last point of contact. It's the last of the 3. They're constructed of leather, plastic, carbon fiber. It depends on what you're looking to do. My bike that I have at home is carbon fiber. I spent probably $250 on it. And the reason is just it weighs less. We have to remember when we're cyclists that every gram of weight we add to the bike is a gram that we have to get up that big hill. So our seat post. So our seat post there, it's used to support the saddle. It attaches to the frame, and there's a couple type of seat post bolts. We have the quick release bolt, which is a lot like this. You can unloosen the tension and move the seat post up or down depending on what you're looking to do. There's also the fixed bolt. So you fix your bolt, you tighten it up as tight as it can go, and that's where your seat post is going to be. There's no changing unless you get off the bike and unscrew the bolt. There's also hydraulic seat posts. So these are real important when you're mountain biking. If, for example, when you're going down the hill, you want to be way off the back of the bike, real low. Your center of gravity is towards the back of the tire, which might be different if you're trying to climb a hill. You might want your seat up a little bit. So they have hydraulic ones that will actually fluctuate on the move. So the wheel, there's an inner tire, there's an outer tire, the rim, the spokes, and size is really going to be the big difference here, especially when we're talking about mountain bikes. The standard forever was 26 inches. Now it's 29 inches versus 27 inches. So your 29er versus your 27er. Obviously the 29er is going to be on your left-hand side versus your 27er. Benefits of the 29er, you can be a novice bike rider and navigate most obstacles. Your sticks, your rocks, your curbs, because of the diameter of the tire, where that tire is hitting the obstacle, it's just easier for the tire to get over it. Some of the downsides or some of the benefits for the 27 are it's a lot more maneuverable. So the 29er, they're a little bit wider, they're a little bit longer, so it's hard to get in and out of turns, whereas your 27er, you can get in and out of turns a lot easier. But for some of those things like curbs, etc., you really need a good foundation on how to operate a bike or you're going to have difficulty getting over it. Next should be our suspension systems. We have a hardtail and a full suspension system. So the full suspension system is where the arrow is. This is a full suspension. Your hardtail is the left. The full suspension system benefit is you don't feel a lot of the bumps. We remember back from the 1800s with the bone shakers where you're feeling everything. On a hardtail, you're going through a trail in the woods. You go over a stick or a rock, you're not even going to feel it. The bike, the suspension is going to take all the brunt. Benefit of the hardtail though is if you're trying to get up a hill and you're on a full suspension bike, every time you push down to generate some more power, you're activating that suspension and it's just slowing you down. So there's some benefits for a hardtail. You'll notice that the bike on the left is the police bike, and they want you when you're operating a police bike to use a hardtail. So some of our bicycle accessories. How can we spend money on a bike? There's a bunch up here. I'll read them off and then we're going to go through them individually. So we have our rear racks, our rack bags, our reflectors, kickstands, water bottle cages, bike computer warning devices, security systems, frame-mounted pumps, toe clips and straps, and lighting systems. So our rear rack and our rack bag, that just goes above the rear tire, attaches to the frame. The rack bag, I mean, if you're out on patrol, you could put anything in there. You could put, extra batteries, extra handcuffs, whatever you think you're going to need on patrol, you'll be able to throw right in that rack bag. So our reflectors, standard, nothing fancy about that, just your basic reflector. Kickstand, kickstands are important. We talked about carbon fiber before, right? You don't want to be the guy that just throws his bike on the ground because you're going to damage some of the components that you need to operate the bike. So it's important if you're going to be utilizing bike patrol to have that kickstand. So water bottle cages. Right there, hydration is continuing process, right? So we have to make sure that we have a means to have a drink of water when we're out on patrol. We don't want to be biking for 2 or 3 hours, not have anything to rehydrate ourselves with. You're going to put yourself in a bad way. So it's important to have a couple couple bottles of water with you. Our frame mounted pumps. So there's pumps that mount right to the bottom of the frame. You need to have something in case you have a flat. You're out riding along on patrol, your front tire goes pop, and you need a way to fix that you're going to need a pump. You can also throw that pump in the rack bag, for example, if you don't want to damage the frame. Our toe clips and our straps. So that's a picture of a strap, and that's a picture of a toe clip. Some of the benefits of the toe clip is and even a strap to a degree, you're just getting more power out of your pedal stroke. So think about no strap, the only power is getting activated on the downstroke, and then you're waiting until the pedal comes up to be able to reactivate it. With these two devices, you're able to utilize 100% of your power. Downside with the clips is that you need something on the bottom of your shoe that actually clips into the clip, so it's not really practical for patrol because you have to walk on your heels. For the straps, you can just a pair of black sneakers and you're good to go. Security systems, we're just talking about your basic lock, bike lock. You know, we don't want to go into Dunkin' Donuts, get a cup of coffee, come out and see that our bike is gone. That's going to be tough to explain. So just a simple bike lock. So our lighting is important. So it's really cool to have the red and blue lights on your bike, but how practical is that if you're riding at night or in low light? Does anyone remember the commercials from the Saturns years ago, where the headlights were on, and everyone was saying, hey, your headlights are on, your headlights are on. Well, that was important because you were being recognized, you were being noticed. So you want to be noticed on a bike. So simple light like this, bunch of different features, you're gonna get noticed when you're driving. Especially something like that. That's going to alert incoming traffic, like, hey, what's going on over there? And you'll be seen. Big thing with lighting is to consider charging. How are we charging this? Is this battery or something different? This happens to be a USB charger. It gets about 8 hours, so I can ride my entire shift. Just take this off the wherever it's attached and plug it right into a computer to charge it. Next consideration is lumens. What kind of output am I dealing with? This one happens to be 350 lumens. That light picture there is 800 lumens. So you can really, depending on how much you want to spend, you can put some lumens on your bike lights. So bicycle computer. This is a Garmin Edge 1000. I'm going to hand this out. Just if you want to just pass it along as I talk about it. It tracks a whole bunch of stuff. It comes with a heart rate monitor. If you want to check your heart rate, that's kind of important. You're riding along in patrol, and you're huffing and puffing, Your heart rate's 160, 170. All of a sudden you got to dismount and engage somebody. So you got to think about where your heart rate is when you're biking. Some other things: display time. It shows you how long you've been on the bike. The ride time shows you your route. Shows you your speeds, your top, your average. It'll actually show you your incline. So you'll say, hey, I'm on a 10% incline. I know I need to get into a different gear. It has, again, it'll show you what gear you're in. I link mine with an app called Strava. This is Strava here. This was a screenshot of me on bike patrol on August 16, 2015. I did 17.3 miles in 2 hours and 15 minutes. Shows your route, shows you the altitude that I achieved. These things are really invaluable.
If you're one of millions of cyclists, you know every time you saddle up, anything can happen. You do your best to ride safely, but those around you, that can be another story. But the number one threat to every cyclist is the one you never see coming. Because it's not on the road ahead, it's right behind you. And the threat is real. According to a recent study, 40% of cycling fatalities occur when riders are struck from behind. But with Varia rear view radar, the world's first cycling radar, you know traffic is back there, 150 yards out. And your tail light sends them a wake-up call too. And that can make all the difference. Varia rear view radar. Ride on.
So as the video just described, this is the Garmin Varia, or Varia, depending on how you want to pronounce it. It's just a rear-facing radar. So you'll see the output. It's pretty bright, different functionality to it. I'll hand this out. So something like that, you know, as a cyclist, our big concern is what we can't see behind us, as the video says. So that links with the bike computer. It gives you an audio alert and a visual alert that there's cars behind you. So that when you're biking and you're looking ahead on what obstacles you might have to navigate, you'll know, hey, there's also a car behind me, so I can't just, you know, pull into the roadway. The other cool thing about that one is linked to the bike computer, whatever the bike computer is. There's multiple cars that will display, so I'll get 2 or 3 dots, and I'll know, all right, there's a car coming, and then there's 2 cars behind me. So again, it's just a safety thing, one of those accessories that you can spend money on to, you know, to protect yourself. Again, it's a rear-facing bicycle radar. It's also a red light, so they have some things that you can attach to the rear of your bike that's just a bright red flash. Works with the Garmin bike computer, and it activates an alert on my computer that indicates when a vehicle's behind me. So some bicycle safety concerns and hazards that we need to be conscious of. Bicycle safety. So recommended equipment for police bicycle units. Policy obviously may dictate certain things are mandatory, so check with your policies. But some examples are helmets. There's a helmet there. Gloves. You'll notice the gloves, they have a padding here, which we remember that our hands are one of 3 points of contact. So we need to be conscious of the fact that we're constantly putting our weight on our hands, and it's a benefit to have the padding there. Eye protection. You don't want to be riding behind a cyclist and have them get debris in your eye and cause you to have an accident. Your uniform. Reflective. The idea here is to be identifiable. We have to understand that when we're biking in an urban environment, people might not recognize that we're the police. They don't expect us to be the police. So you have to make sure that when you get off your bike, hey, that's the police, they're supposed to be here, and we're not somebody trying to rob somebody or whatever. So some safety concerns, they say 15% of all bike crashes resulting in death or injury or result of a collision with a motor vehicle. The majority of injuries are a result from falls or collisions. So some common bike injuries, they result from the bike overturning. So you're riding along, something happens, and your ass ends over the bike, you get hurt. Bike off road, so you're riding along and something comes up and you have to dump the bike off the road and you fall off and get injured. Bike into a fixed object. So you're riding along, not paying attention, and you go into a telephone pole. Or big, we talked about parks before. You know, you're in a park for a concert and you hit a tree, not paying attention. Bike into a pedestrian. This is going to be a recurring theme here, into a pedestrian. We have to make sure we understand where all the people are near us when we're biking. And then bike into a dog. We spoke about some dogs are high prey dogs. They're going to run out, they're going to try to attack that thing that's moving, which is you on a bike. Some hazards. We have surface hazards. Things like holes, cracks, road drop-offs. Curb. We talked a little bit before about a curb. If you're not prepared to navigate a curb, you could hit it, which is going to retard the momentum of the bike, and you're going to go over the bike. Loose sand, debris, or glass. If you're riding along, especially at speed, and you hit some glass, it's going to pop the tire, it's going to cause you to lose control of the bike, and you're going to dump. Railroad tracks, again, just a hazard for potentially popping the tire. Drainage grates, this is a big one. So you're riding along, and your tire just happens to be width-wise enough to fit in a drainage grate, and you hit it perfectly, that bike is going into that grate, and you're going off the top of the bike. Standing water, that's what happened to me. You see a puddle, you don't think anything of it, you're riding along, and you just think you're just going to go through a small puddle. It turns out to be a pothole that you weren't expecting, and again, your ass end over the bike. Biking hazards continued. Some visual hazards that we have to be conscious of. Sun, glare. You're biking at 5:30 in the afternoon or something. The sun's going down, gets in your eye. You're not able to see. That could be problematic. Parked or moving vehicles. So you're riding along and there's a parked car. You can't see what's behind it, and it's a little kid that runs out. You got to be prepared for something like that. Fences or landscaping. So it's a 8-foot high fence, privacy fence. We don't know what's around the corner. We take a corner too sharp and we crash into something. Buildings, same premise as the fence. Just you got to be aware of what you're biking near. Pedestrians, again, we can't be hitting people that are walking along if we're riding a bike. Weather, rain or fog. Do we want to be riding in fog? If you can't see a car, for example, the car's not going to be able to see you. So probably not a great idea to be riding around in fog. And if we are riding around in fog, making sure we have the proper equipment, like a light or something that is going to make us visible. Darkness, same thing. Need that light. We don't want to be riding around at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night in the summertime, because we're just going to expose ourselves to potentially getting hit. Biking hazards continue here. Some moving hazards that we need to be thinking about. Motor vehicles, right? We don't want to get hit. That's why we spend money on things like radars, so that when we're biking along and we need to move left rapidly because there's a drainage grate, there's nothing behind us, and we know that because of the radar. Open car doors. You're going along on Broadway or whatever street, riding along, and we don't realize there's somebody in an upcoming car, and they open the door and you hit the car. You're going to damage their car, you're going to damage the bike, you're going to damage yourself. Parked or moving vehicles, again, we need to be conscious of what's around us when we're biking. Other cyclists, this is a big one. We have that photo from earlier in the presentation of that train of bikes. So if you're biking with other cyclists and your front tire hits their rear tire, it's going to destabilize your platform. You're going to fall, and then you're going to cause everyone behind you to fall. Pedestrians again. Dogs or other animals. I'll tell a quick story about me. I was biking early in the morning on my road bike, humming along, not really thinking anything, and a chipmunk came and hit me in the leg. Scared the crap out of me, and I almost dumped the bike. So it's potential for groundhogs, for example. A groundhog could run out, and then you're going to have to either avoid hitting the groundhog or hit the groundhog. So this is what not to do on a bike.
Hello to you. Nice. Good. Oh, nice, did it? Not scared. No way.
Don't do this. Especially don't do this.
There's a way.
Don't do that when you're out of control. So our review here. We were able to identify the history of the bicycle and car police bicycles, right? Bicycles came about in the 1800s. Police bicycles really became rampant in the 1970s, 1980s. Some advantages of the police bike. Cost. There's some cost advantages. Community engagement advantages. That's the big one that most agencies are concerned with. Bicycle nomenclature. We have things like the frame, we have the brakes, tires, etc. Bicycle accessories, your bike computers, your lights, your radar, and some safety concerns. We have some visual concerns and some surface concerns that we need to be conscious of. And that's it. Thank you so much. I should be good with my time, so hopefully there's no questions.
Good.